Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and welcome, Willie. So we're just recording now. We've done the land acknowledgement and disclosure of pecuniary interest, which there was none, and approved the minutes of the last meeting. And we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda tonight. I have a mover and seconder for the agenda. Moved by Miriam, seconded by Mark. All in favor? It's moved. Oh, I don't know if I approved the.
I don't think you called a vote on it.
We have a vote.
We have,
All in favor for
yeah,
that?
sorry, I was going to say that.
All in favor for the meeting minutes? Okay, that's everyone. Okay, so move on to the agenda. Business arising from the minutes, we have none. Delegations, none. Presentations, none. And correspondence. The first correspondence we have is the town of Coburg regarding stormwater charges. And I'll ask mover and seconder for that.
I'll move it.
Moved by Randy, seconded by Joan. And any discussion on that? Do you want to
Do you want
start
to say anything about that?
or-
Aaron?
I was only going to report that we have a council, Coburg Council has not considered a report yet. We are expecting it soon from consultants that are working with the town's staff.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
We'll let you know.
All right, any questions? No. So would I ask for all in favor of each one or correspondence?
Because one is note and file and one's a refer to staff, it's each one.
Okay, so I will call a vote, all in favor? The first one. And any opposed? And B is the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry regarding Reg 41-24. Second mover and a second for this, moved by Joan, seconded by Adam. And is there anyone who'd like to speak to that first? Yeah.
I just have a question, if I may. On the second page, the first bullet point at the top, it refers to mandatory requirement for conservation authorities to issue permits where a minister's order has been made under the various sections. My question has to do with, my understanding is that professional engineers and professional planners have sort of a personal liability. How do I describe it? They have to own their position, but if they're told by someone else to carry out work, is there any concern there?
Through you, Madam Chair. Well, there is certainly an obligation from a professional planner's ethics code, but from a permitting perspective, we are working in a different capacity. If that is so ordered by the minister, then the authority would be obligated to issue that permit now, and we haven't had such a permit be issued at this time, and further discussion would have to be had as to how to issue that permit.
Can I just add into that too, that you are correct in that planners and engineers, as well as any professional designation, yes, it's DGA. If I was told to issue an opinion or a permit that went against my code of ethics as that profession, I could not do that because I would be going against my own code of ethics. So no matter what was happening here, and then it would be up to the organization. But personally, any of the staff that is bound by a code of ethics under their professional designation cannot. Does that?
Yes,
clarify?
what I'm understanding is that if the situation arose, then the staff person would go on record with their opinion based on their.
Yes,
ethics.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you, sorry.
No, it's okay. Any other questions or comments on this item? So I will call, Willie?
Yeah, thank you. And Clariton Council, we dealt with this, and Councilors Ward and myself were in attendance, and we did have a report from staff regarding the Bill 23 update, Ontario Reg 4124. And some of that was in the staff report once an application is confirmed as complete, a conservation authority cannot request additional studies or technical information. Conditions that can be included on a permit by a conservation authority are limited to matters related to natural hazards and public safety and general permit administration. So I guess in some way what we have here on item 8B is, can I say, not the whole reg. I guess it's quite in-depth, and the one I see here is the new reg will apply to all conservation authorities and the existing 36 conservation authorities. And what I'd be correct in saying, rather than one, it's whatever reg it applies to everybody.
You Madam Chair, yeah, that you're correct, and I'll get into that in the new business, that there is going to be one regulation that will replace. Currently, all 36 conservation authorities have their own individual regulations, and each CA will now be subject to the one regulation 41-24.
Okay, and I apologize, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And anyone opposed? So that's moved. 9, applications under Ontario Regulation 168/06, permits approved by the executive. And that schedule is attached. Did anybody have any questions about any permits? Oh, I have to ask some first. A mover and a seconder, sorry. A move by Adam, seconded by Randy. Any questions about any of the permits? No, so I'll call the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? No, that's moved. Committee reports, none. And new business. A, Ganaraska Forest Trail Modeling Public Consultation. There is a staff report attached. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder first. Moved by Adam, seconded by Willie. And I will pass it over to Pam.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a formal report to give. I'm hoping everybody had time to read the staff report. I'm happy to entertain questions about it.
Yeah, so I would just like to say that I attended both sessions and Adam joined a session as well. And I think it was, to me, it looked very well attended and very, very cooperative and a lot of questions. And that's great to see. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank you for a very good report. It's really, really easy to understand because I didn't have an opportunity to attend. My question has to do with the questions and trails. Were there, and I know that you've got some detailed comment review coming up. I remember participating in another forest master planning aspect, another jurisdiction. And the question of noise and user separation came up. So if you're, for example, a non-motorized vehicle user, what is the separation distance from a motorized trail, for example? Like, is there sort of a buffer distance on top of all of the sort of the ecological system matters? But I guess anticipating future details, was something like that raised? Or did anyone ask a question?
Yes, Madam Chair. We asked the question about trail separation from one another, just from that idea that you're immersed in the forest, not for anything of what might be happening on that trail, noise or colorfulness or something like that. So it wasn't thought of in that type of detail. But what I can say about noise in general is we do have regulations and rules about decibel levels of things like off-road motorcycles and ATVs. So that's already worked into some of the processes. And I guess just the distance from one trail to another was supposed to encapsulate everything, again, the noise from that next door road or that property, vice versa, from the trail to the property or from the house to the trail. So, but no question that I recall was ever specific about, noise being the motivation for trail separation. I don't recall. I can look at when I'm going through those detailed comments, but I don't recall there anything being brought forward.
Any other questions or comments? Mark?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I looked at the answers to some of those questions, and I think you're gonna have a hard time distinguishing between, what's favorable and what's not, because a lot of the answers they're either totally in agreement or totally in disagreement. So I wish you well on that one, Pam, because I really don't, yeah, it seemed to be almost there was no distinct, correct answer to any of them. Am I wrong in assuming that? Was that similar to when people were actually at the meetings where you're getting that same kind of response?
Yeah, Madam Chair. So at the meetings, we didn't collect any comments from the meetings. People were still encouraged to go back and fill out the one survey to collect it all. But yes, I would say that some of the questions we are kind of right in that mid-range of response. But we will look at all of that range of comments, and then looking at each particular model criteria, say whether or not we have that ability to give that flexibility. So sometimes other things like legislative needs may actually push us more in one direction, where if we can have that flexibility, then we'll look at, well, where do we meet in the middle? The model is never intended to create that kind of black and white yes or no. It is meant to be a tool to give guidance. And it's never looking at one criteria by itself either. So the whole process has a lot of flexibility in it to begin with, but it is interesting, and thank you for your hope.
Good luck.
Miriam?
Yes, if I may follow up on that, I noticed when I was comparing the survey responses, with regards to old growth and prairie, there was a shift. And I'm just wondering, me being the field that I practice in, I wonder if a little bit more education or sharing of ideas, understanding, how that natural system actually works and how it functions, might help in an appreciation, so that it's maybe not so divided. So that was my sort of first reaction when I read those responses.
And through you, Madam Chair, I would agree. I would say, just knowing what some of the written comments were, we do want a trail heading towards the tall grass or those older areas of the forest. They're not old growth. I'll preface that. It's just an area that's being managed because it's at a successional later stage. We want to go there because we want to experience those things, which is very much fine. We just have to make sure we allow people to see those things so that they're not, in creating challenges to those spaces. So it's, again, finding that balance, going, yes, we want to get there. We just have to get there safely for what that means to the environment.
Thank you. And I think I saw Willie. Did you have a question or a comment? We can't hear you. You're muted.
You're right. Sorry about that. No, my two previous speakers, Mark and I think the Marion, did pick up on number 4 and number 5. I'm looking at number 4, strongly agree, and then the strongly disagree. And this, well, if I combine the two, you got one at 30%, one at 18%, and the other with trails, avoid tall grass. The disagrees and strongly disagrees overshadow the strongly agree and agree. But the one point I did want to make was the statement released by GRCA, and I think that was very good. And I'm just wondering how many times that this has been communicated that the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority is not closing trails to any existing user groups. And the despite misinformation. So how many times have we tried to communicate that?
For you, Madam Chair, I'll let Linda jump in. It is a message that we continually are communicating in different forums and different wording. But it is something that we will continue to say. Various user groups are in fear that their activity will no longer be allowed, maybe not just in the lands we own, but even, greater out in the province. So, but yeah, I'll say it in this board meeting as well, the multi-use nature of the forest will remain. Any exercises we do to improve or allow more opportunities in the forest is not intended to remove. As I said in the open houses, the one thing that if ever will remove is when other legislative things are imposed in the province that we have to follow suit with. And one of the biggest things right now that is challenging, especially in the motorized world, is getting proper insurance. And it's not because we're saying no, it's because the insurance companies won't insure those things and therefore they can't come onto the properties. So yeah, I'll say it over and over again, multi-use nature of the trails are not at risk. Those activities that are being permitted will continue to be.
Thank you very much, Pam, and great work.
Thank you.
And I think for myself in observing the questions at the open houses is that was primarily the concern, not so much the content of these survey questions, but it was what trails are you closing and when, and there was a lot of clarifying of that. And I also would agree with the questions too. I noticed that straight away. The question about species at risk, definitely we want to protect them, but then going into old forest and grasslands, also wanting that desire to go into those spaces, as well as the desire to go into the interior of the forest, potentially bringing in invasive species and not having that understanding by saying yes, the risk that could bring. I think those questions are another piece to those questions with some educational opportunities with those. Any other questions or comments about this report? Okay, I'll ask all in favor. And any opposed? I just want to acknowledge that Adam did have to leave early and he gave notice. Moving on to 11B, Conservation Act amendments in Ontario Regulation 41/24. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that one? Moved by Miriam, seconded by Joan. And would you like to speak to that?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. On April 1st, actually two regulations, one in particular, Ontario Regulation 41/24 and Ontario Regulation 42/24, as well as unproclaimed sections of the Conservation Authorities Act are going to be coming into effect. So now there's a number of things. Our planning and regulatory process will largely remain the same. Municipalities will continue to circulate Planning Act applications to the GRCA for review and comment. We will continue to require applications for a permit to undertake otherwise prohibited development, interference, or alteration activities in regulated areas as defined in the Conservation Authorities Act and the new regulation. And these legislative changes do not impact planning services that GRCA, currently provides. The Conservation Authority updates, just as an overview, and many of these items are going to be reflected in an upcoming policy document that will be prepared by staff. Some items, the conservation of land and pollution tests have been removed, and unstable soils and bedrock have been added. The tests of flooding, erosion, and dynamic beaches remain. There are certain enhanced minister's powers regarding permits. There's an additional review appeal process for permit fees and decisions to the minister or the Ontario Land Tribunal. And there are new enforcement powers, including charges regarding the ability for officers to enter properties, issue stop work orders, as well as enhanced penalties for fines and potentially imprisonment. The Ontario Regulation 41/24 There's been a change in the definition of a water course, which was previously an identifiable depression in the ground in which a flow of water regularly or continuously occurs, to now being a defined channel having bed and banks or sides in which a flow of water regularly or continuously occurs. That may have some impacts in headwater territories. The removal of the 120 meter other area, or that area that the Conservation Authority regulated from provincially significant wetlands or wetlands greater than 2 hectares. Now the Conservation Authority will regulate only an area of 30 meters from wetlands. There will be a requirement for annual updates to mapping, as well as notification for significant mapping changes. There's going to be exemptions for low risk activities. And these will include non-habitable accessory structures less than 15 square meters or less, tile drains, fences, and reconstructions of a non-habitable garage to the same size, provided it's not made habitable, and certain customer service standards for conservation authorities, specifically that we're going to be there's an obligation to ensure complete applications. As been previously mentioned, the Conservation Authority has 21 days to notify an applicant in writing whether or not the application complies or is considered to be a complete application. And that includes the studies, a number of items, and any fees. To reflect the changes, the GRCA is going to has reviewed and have updated our regulatory mapping to reflect the new limits. And as mentioned, an interim policy document to reflect these changes will be produced by staff. And our notifications have been sent out to the municipalities.
Thank you. Any questions? Ray?
Thank you. Regarding meeting the 21 days, et cetera, is there a KPI in that, you know, how we're meeting, and are we meeting that 21 days? What happens if it extends beyond that, et cetera? What are your thoughts there?
Through you, Madam Chair, there are options available to the applicant that they can request a review by the authority. Again, that's going to be reflected in a document that we can, in our policy document, outlining what the applicant will be able to do. But it will be certainly incumbent upon staff to ensure that in writing it is indicated.
And Miriam? Was there something I didn't see anything?
Yes, thank you. I more of a comment than a question. On the second page, the first bullet with regards to removal of the 120 meter other areas, my comment has to do with the provincially significant wetlands or wetlands greater than 2 hectares. And I just wanted to share this information. Some years ago, I attended a presentation by the then Environment Commissioner, Diane Sachs. I think that I've got her title right, and she's out of that position now, but it was very interesting because if my recollection is correct, she said there is 100 years of work to properly research and document sensitive areas like wetlands and related types of ecosystems in Ontario, still to do. So I get a little bit nervous because we do have some designated areas, but there's still quite a bit of work to do. Am I off base on that, or is that a general observation? It might be Northern Ontario, more so Northern Ontario, I don't know. But that was a real eye opener for me.
Through you, Madam Chair, this is going to refer to the areas over which a permit or may be required. So those areas that are regulated by the Conservation Authority. From a regulatory perspective, whether or not to issue that permit based on the development activity proposed or the impact to the wetland, that's going to be a hydrologic impact. So
it could be a specific study at that time to determine.
It Through you, Madam Chair, it may be, but it may be also in consult with the municipality who's looking at the natural heritage components as well.
Just nervous about that one.
And I just want to welcome Tracy, and I'm not sure if you caught on, but we're on 11B right now.
Whoops, I got it in front of me. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? I just have a very high level question. With these changes, do you foresee any staffing or financial requirements to the municipalities or to the Conservation Authority with these changes?
Through you, Madam Chair, there is a potential I could see, depending on the number, if there are requests for reviews or if there's additional appeals, then that could occupy more of staff time.
No. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so I will call a vote, all in favor? Any opposed? None, so that's passed. 11C, designation of provincial offenses officers. This is staff report attached. Did any staff want to speak to this at all? I think it's good. Move forward.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, it's simply a housekeeping that we have to do as a result of regulation 4124, because our previous provincial offenses officers were appointed under section 28, 29. Those have now disappeared, so it's now under section 3.1 of the Conservation Authority Act.
Thank you. Any questions?
Oh, that was good move.
Oh, sorry, mover and a seconder, please. So moved by Miriam, seconded by
I'll second it.
seconded by Randy. Any other questions? Okay, I'll call all in favor. Anyone opposed? Stuff there, yeah. And 11D, 2023 timeline report for section 28 applications. Mover and a seconder for that one, please. Moved by Mark, second by Joan. Any questions or comments? All right, I'll ask all in favor. Anyone opposed? So that is moved as well. Other business, I have none.
Through you, Madam Chair, and more mainly for staff and for Linda. I just thought you might wish to know that our manager of planning, Ann Taylor Scott, resigned on Monday in Coburg. So I know you do business with, have done business with her and wish her all the very best, but to let you know that that's there. So you'll, there's some other people filling in at this point. So if you need to deal with Coburg at that point, either through the CAO or whatever, that would be for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no other new business. Okay, so we have nothing for question period. No one's attending from the public. So I will ask for someone to adjourn the meeting. No one? Okay, no one. Thank you, Joan. That's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, happy Easter.
Yeah.
Yes, happy
Happy
Easter, happy spring,
first day of spring yesterday.
Thank you. Have a good Easter, everyone.
Bye.